Hello and welcome to Hidden Home. Today we've got a bit of an unusual episode. I'm being interviewed by Stuart from the Home Cinema Alliance group we're part of, and it's kind of a Meet the Dealers episode, so I'm getting interviewed by him, but I thought it'd be very interesting for you guys to see as well. So watch on.
Hi Dan, thanks for having us up to your show home stroke business unit in
self-indulgent
Bath.
room.
Yeah, very self-indulgent. Yeah, I think before we even started doing this, we sat down for a good hour and a half listening to music.
Yeah, no, I like to show it off.
It's the geeky thing in us, isn't it? We may enjoy this industry, but we also enjoy being in this industry as well.
100%. Yeah, that's how I got into it.
So tell us a bit about. Before we get into your business, tell us a bit about yourself. What was your education at university? You mentioned you went to Canterbury University.
Yeah.
What was your education, and what led you on
I
to
think
this?
the less said about that, the better. So how did I get into it? I think that's probably a safer question. As a kid, I think my earliest memories are probably in maybe about 12 or something like that. I was in bands. I was getting into music. My parents had like a Technics hi-fi downstairs. It was all right, to be fair, with like hindsight. I don't think they knew, but it was all right. So I think I was just inspired by that, and I started to want my own. And maybe I think like one of my other friends who was in a band, his dad had like this mystical hi-fi thing in a room downstairs, and because we were always listening to music and chatting away at night when you'd sort of do a sleepover with your friends from school or whatever, or bandmates in this case. I was like, I need a hi-fi. So I started researching. I think what hi-fi was like pretty much the only thing at the time. Yeah. Maybe there's a few others. That's pretty much what you'd see in the newsagent. So I started looking at that, and I ended up buying like a Marantz CD player, a little Technics amp. And I'd run out of money, so I bought a pair of like Jamo speakers out the back of a K's catalogue or something. But I set it all up properly. I had stands, cables, things like that, and I really did set it up properly in my bedroom. And I had a nice little, because my dad worked from home, I had like one of those high back office chairs, really comfortable. Just discovered this thing of like soundstage and music and details, and it was just opened my eyes completely. I didn't realise that was in music. I was so used to like, people putting like a ghetto blaster or speakers tied together, and it was just audio.
Just shouting at you.
Yeah, just music coming from a space, and
Yeah.
that was it really. I didn't sort of understand that there was this soundscape that had been so carefully engineered. And then I discovered that, and that was quite young in life, and so the journey's been long and really progressive. And when I went to uni, I started having student loan instalments that should have been spent on sensible things, and they weren't.
They never were.
No,
never
so
were.
I get whatever it was at a time, and I'd probably be able to like spare like 400 quid. So I started going up to hi-fi that went from like 150 quid a box kind of thing up to like maybe about 400 pounds a box and stuff like that. So it's starting to get quite serious. Like, it's a Myriad CD player and a pair of Ruark speakers from a place in Maidstone. I just started really getting addicted to it. I think
I think the thing is, it's like, I think if I look back, it's really similar. I mean, we've known each other, but I don't think we've met before today, properly in person. And it's exactly the same. My first Saturday job was working for Dixon's.
Yeah.
I remember selling my best friend, I think it was a Technics hi-fi, stack system. But actually, when I had my first proper job, still living from home with mum and dad, a 32-inch cathode ray tube TV, a 5.1, I think it was Kef, Polk.
Yeah.
Because I think Polk were the only ones who did a shielded centre speaker that went on top of the cathode ray tube TV, and then a rail subwoofer.
Yeah.
So I completely with you there. Should have been spending my money, should have been spending my grant on education.
Yeah, but it was going on the hi-fi.
Yeah, Laserdisc player.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did that, and then it was my last summer job. I was working in a shoe shop in Bath. I had my little uniform on with the brand on, and I was buying a pair of Audio Note speakers. They're about £1,000 ANJs from Radford's in Bath, and guys phoned me up at work and sort of said, thanks for your order and stuff, but do you want a job? And I was like, oh yeah, all right, yeah, maybe I do. But there's a bit of a catch. I've got to go back to uni for a year. And they were like, that's probably not a problem because the guy's leaving, is going to the police. They do academic year intake. So that'd be September. So as long as you can handle that. So I was like, yeah, that's fine in theory. Brilliant. Take it on paper, accept, and we're chatting a year. When I came back, it was a bit like tumbleweeds. I couldn't get hold of them for one reason or another. I didn't try very hard, to be honest, but couldn't get hold of them. So I was walking around and I saw there was a job advertised in Sevenoaks in Bristol. So I took that, and then it was a bit awkward really, because I really enjoyed that, and Mike at Sevenoaks was lovely, Andy Ford, the people there, they were just like lovely people, and I loved the industry. But then this job offer came up and I'd be higher up in the shop, and I was just so torn, and I had to like break the bad news. It was like sort of breaking up with a girlfriend or something, you know, like that I was leaving and going to Radford. So I worked there for a few years, realised there was a glass ceiling in the, you know, payroll effectively if you're going to work in retail, even though it's luxury retail. I got offered a directorship, but there was no shareholding, and, you know, again, I felt that was a bit iffy because I had legal responsibility and stuff like that. It sort of seemed good on paper, but it seemed good in principle, but on paper it was terrible when you analyse it. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's a good effort at keeping me, but thanks, but no thanks. I set up by myself, and I think slightly before that as well, I was kind of the only one out of all the branches that really understood multi-room audio, doing things like link connect systems and iMerges and Kivors and all these like database based.
So in a timeline, when was it you sort of thought about starting up?
That was
what's
I
now
finished
known as
uni in like
technology?
2001 or something like
Right,
that.
okay.
So yeah, we're talking like 24 years ago.
Yeah.
That I started in the industry. This was pre-streaming, pre-broadband, realistically, pre-domestic broadband anyway. You perhaps have broadband at universities and things like that, and public spaces.
Yeah, because I think streaming didn't really...
It was Sonos, really.
Sonos 2006.
Because I remember going to, I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I remember going to a CEDIA, because this is back when CEDIA was the big trade show, in Brighton. So that dates it.
Yeah.
And so Sonos were there, and I just set up by myself. And I went up to them, I was like, yeah, I'm trade. Can I get an account? And they went, yeah. And I sort of said, asking the question, what's the margin? And they said 10%. And I went, no, sorry, you're mistaken there. I'm trade. And they were like, yeah, 10%. I was like, no, I'm trade. 10%. I was like, this can't be right. I was doing the maths. I was like, if I get 10 grand sale, I make £1,000. If one box goes wrong, I've got to replace it. That's wipe my margin out. I was like, this can't, how do you have a high service industry based on 10% margins, which 10% overall margins, fine. But 10% before you've even started, and 10% before you've like run over on time, but want to maintain that really good relationship and not bill for that extra half day because something, cropped up and it wasn't quite as planned. For me, that's high service. You shouldn't charge for that.
No, and I think if you look at it in the same scenario, I think that a lot of people look at our industry and think, it's high ticket items, high profitability. But I think there are a lot of things like the without not wanting to mention the brand too much, but like with Sonos, TVs in general. I mean, even to this day, we do jobs where people are like, "Oh, I'll buy the TV off you." I'm like, "It's up to you."
Yeah, not fast.
I could do it, and we can get the 5-year warranty through through LG, through one of our suppliers, or buy it from John Lewis and get a John Lewis warranty or somewhere like that. I think that it is a case of that there are brands out there who want to do high ticket items, and I think anybody coming into this industry has to be aware of that. And someone buying from us as well.
The all margin offers people is better service. It doesn't offer me more money.
No.
Because I will be fair every single time to my own detriment, realistically, with the money I've made from a job. In the sense I won't just pocket it and that's gone. That services the job, certainly for the warranty period, even to the point where labour's free for me most of the time, except for in exceptional circumstances. It's different if the house floods and everything gets replaced, and yes, it's chargeable, it's insurance, it's all those things. But if it's something like, they've got a faulty skybox even, that's not even my thing, but I need to come and just help them swap it out. Those things for me, they just go under the radar. I don't bill for them. I look after the client based on the fact that the original job was profitable on day one.
And I think that if you speak to a lot of the HCA members, I think a lot of us are similar in respects of like, I've got clients that will phone me up on a Saturday and we've got IP controllable power supplies in there and they can perfectly reboot their own skybox and that, but it's like you get the WhatsApp message, can't watch Sky, give me 5 seconds on the phone, on the laptop, because that person is going to is a good customer.
And I think without doing the maths, I would say that every bit of money I make on day one, by year 10, I've spent with that client back to them. And then what happens is they move house or need a system update, and the whole process starts again.
It's a journey.
It's a journey, and it's a relationship, and that probably is the biggest ethos I have outside of like the passion for why I deal with certain brands and certain products. If I've got a passion for the business, that's what it is. The money comes in, but then the money gets fed back to the client in service. Service is absolutely everything. It's like the absolute goal of what I do is an honest, really, really beneficial relationship for the end user.
So if we look at like the noughties, so if you, obviously we briefly touched on Sonos and multi-room audio and, you know, the advent of, you know, the internet a bit more than the old-fashioned dial-up you used to get. If we go into the noughties, sort of like your 2010 to 2020, sort of, what was your typical sort of system, your typical sort of job?
So I'd probably have to rewind a little bit further to base on where I came from. So I came from things like Link Connect, and Link Connect was brilliant in the sense that I think it still has principles behind it for how you build it in terms of like quality per room and things that even modern day multi-room systems, C4s, URCs, RTIs don't fully cater for. In the sense that you'd have like a room box, which is like your bog standard amplifier, your Sonos amp, your whatever like that. Then they'd just have like a preamp box, and they had a whole range of power amps you could specify for that. So every room could be entirely tailored to everything, and even like their multi-channel systems had the input from the central system. So you'd have a local multi-channel system with input from centralized systems, and that was all stored music. It was archived onto a hard drive from your CD. You'd rip. It would look up over Grace Note.
No Spotify in those days.
No. It's rip CDs.
Napster probably just, but that was illegal then.
Yeah. The irony is you come back to a product like an Inuus, and that's what you do there. You rip all your CDs into a database, you combine it with Rune ideally, and then you've got streaming and that side by side in complete harmony. And only if you care can you separate them back out again. Otherwise, they're lumped together as this just music for you. So Lynn described it in the days as like music's like water. You can have your tap water, that's your streaming services, your room amps, your bog standard stuff. But then you can have your sparkling Perrier with a dash of lime, and that's your really high-end amplifier with a mega streamer or CD player or turntable in that localized room. So they would see everything's water, everything's music, but you can have it at different standards. And that was a perfectly good thing. And that's come back into where we are now. So I'm jumping like your gun here a little bit. So I'm going to go back because I'll tell you about how we principle it now. So where were we then? Living control, I would say. Okay. It was living control with iMerge servers, so centralized equipment in structured wiring networks. So we've been in that since day one. That would be then Philips Pronto in a room with IR fed back through a keypad in the wall.
Funnily enough, second of the Philips Pronto thing, I was on eBay the other day because I'm doing some stuff inside the trade for one of the manufacturers of a remote. And I was just looking like, I wonder if you could still pick up like an old Sonos remote, like the original one with the spinny wheel, and like the Logitech Harmonies and the Philips Pronto. There are still working Philips Prontos for sale.
I reckon I might have a couple lying around the garage or something.
I don't know how you're supposed to program now because I know if the software still works.
Yeah, I reckon I got a laptop in the loft that if you put in your battery, a BIOS battery, it might just have it on there somewhere. But
so it sounds like I mean, obviously being in this room here now, it sounds like your background is quite more hi-fi.
I would 100% there's a passion for hi-fi music. I mean, right there is a Fender custom guitar and stuff. I've always loved music. I loved music production in the sense of like the reproduction and the recording process and everything like that. I've always just loved that capturing and then recreating of something special. That is a big deal for me, but that principle applies to movies, it applies to like everything really, like from that point of view, video, all of it's the same. Like I think I'm into the art of it all, you know, the art of cinematography, the art of soundtracks,
how the director intended is something that's often banned around in our industry.
Yeah,
you know,
I would,
but it's almost
you could
like,
get me on a high horse about that comment a little bit, because I often think that what we do is better than the director ever even imagined was even possible. I'd be amazed if they've been in a screening room as good as some of the systems that we'd install. So I think some of it is happy accident. I was listening with a client, we did this amazing thing, like we acoustically treated this lovely room, did a proper deep bass trap wall and everything. Like we were talking earlier, it's a bit like a compromise, like we had to just treat it where we could treat it, but boy did we treat it. And then we sort of massive Macintosh, the hybrid mono amps, so they're mono amplifiers, but they got 2 amps in, solid state for the bass, valves for the high frequency, so it's like a 350 watt solid state amp with a 150, 200 watt valve amp on top.
So for, just hold it there for a second.
Yeah.
So that's Macintosh as in Macintosh, not Macintosh as in Apple Macintosh.
Oh yeah. Macintosh as in under the Griffin cover. Don't tell Mac it's under a Griffin cover.
Just in case anybody's wondering, I didn't realise Apple made that.
Yeah. So these massive amplifiers, and I don't even know them, the Klipsch Jubilee speakers.
Yeah.
They are enormous. They're like wardrobes, like massive horn-loaded things. We put those in, and it was like a out-of-body experience listening to that in that room with that client, and we both looked at each other, and he said it, and I just couldn't agree more. It's like, do you think these artists even know they created this? I'm not so sure they did. But that's what's so beautiful about this stuff is it, no pun intended, it literally amplifies the experience. So they knew they created something special and emotional, and they put their heart on their sleeve, and they put it down on, analog tape, on whatever it is in Pro Tools. They put it down there. They literally poured their heart out, and then you can magnify that experience, whether it's a movie, whether it's music, and it can literally make you cry. I think, and that for me is the passion. It's the goosebumps. It's the tears. It's the lump in your throat at the end of a film. It's whatever it is. It's that.
I mean, I love coming. I mean, from my point of my business, we are so much home cinema than hi-fi. And I think we touched on earlier. Whenever I go back to one of my clients who's got a hi-fi system, or like we come into here where you've got a really good hi-fi system, because I'm not always surrounded by that, or I am surrounded by cinema all the time. It actually reminds me how good music is. And I always say that when you can sit down in front of a good pair of 2-channel speakers, or you can sit in front of a good cinema, just the enjoyment you get out of, in this scenario, music, but obviously movies as well.
I know it's extreme because you're turning down dialogue and all that sort of stuff, but if you put like a horror film on a TV in the olden days and have the sound on, it's terrifying. Turn the sound down, and it's almost comical after time watching the actors and stuff. Like it ruins.
Well, it's almost like if you take the music out of it.
Yeah,
that
this
tension.
is what I'm saying. Yeah. The in the soundtrack is all the fear, all the tension, all the excitement. Everything is in the soundtrack. Like you don't realise it when you actually look at actors acting without soundtrack. It's comical half the time. It's rarely is it inspiring. The visual is actually surprisingly two-dimensional a lot of the time. I mean, I'm totally, dumbing it down, but it's more just to point out the fact that, movies without a soundtrack are almost nothing. Even silent films had live orchestras and live bands playing to them because it made all the difference. So I think the audio in a cinema is really critical. Like, yes, massive picture. I think I was saying it earlier, wasn't I, that when you have a big screen, it makes cinematography leap out even to like the complete Philistine, the guy that goes, I don't care about cinematography, it's just cameras, all I can see it doesn't matter. When you see like the composition of somebody here looking into that, and it's all laid out like a movie posters are, like those stills that aren't still on a moving screen, it leaps out when it's massive. And you can't fail to see it. And I think it's similar with hi-fi. It paints these massive pictures that you can't fail to see the soundscape and
I mean, what was the track we listened to earlier? The
Queen Mary one.
That's it, Queen Mary. I mean, again, from someone who is more from a multi-channel background, just the soundstage of that, where you could have told me you were sitting in a 5.1 system.
Yeah.
There were speakers hidden behind these curtains.
The clicking hi-hat thing that pans.
Because it was almost like, I can remember listening to like Dolby Atmos music when it first came out, I think Tidal, or when Apple did it as well. It was that soundtrack or that song was just, there's so much more to how
Yeah, and there's
sometimes
some
how
weird
we
effects
listen
that
to
even
it.
you're not conscious of to start with. It's things like the sub bass. It sort of seems to like pour out onto the floor. It's sort of boom. It's really weird because it's actually in height dimensions, and I don't understand really how that's ever created, but it definitely happens. Like,
So okay, so let's say, what's the sort of typical install for you? Maybe let's say 5, 6, well, let's go back into the
Yeah.
noughties. So let's say 10 years ago, what was the sort of typical?
okay, so yeah, again, the story was the whole background, really, I guess, of how I got brand allegiances and built my business is most of it's, again, built on honesty and integrity. And I think if a brand doesn't represent that, I've got problems with them. And that's where
Yeah,
I think
okay, I'm
Sonos,
with you,
I'm
yeah.
not massively behind them. I use it when I'm forced to, but I'd rather not. Blue Sound is my honest
I think in fairness for Sonos, they are, I think in the few years there's been a few characters that are trying to step more into the CI market, and I think
Yes, I just don't
see,
think they represent the right service industry. If they're saying that 10% is what, and I'm being honest, I shouldn't be saying it publicly, but if they think companies should be surviving off 10% in a service industry, they're wrong. They're not building the types of dealer that the end user's best shopping with.
yeah,
The Blue Sound stuff that has not loads more margin, but enough more that it sounds better and it performs better. So it's kind of like a win for everyone. The client pays basically the same money. We have more money to service them with, and they get a better sounding, better performing, more open platform product. It's like more honest from every angle. It's more honest as a business proposition. We'll be alive to as a business to service them throughout the thing. We're not going to go anywhere because we're going to go bust selling it. We can offer much better warranty support on it because it's, got the money to do that. So even if we're let down by Blue Sound, not that they ever have been, but in that hypothetical situation where if you're let down by Sonos but you don't want to let your client down, you've got to forfeit the bill.
So have you seen sort of in the noughties, was a lot of your systems more physical media based?
Physical media based? No, I'd say it went to iMerge, which was a CD ripping.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, database thing, which would then appear at keypads in text form. Then, unfortunately, Living Control went bust, and they took CSE down with them because CSE had pretty much the entire inventory of Living Control stock in their warehouse. So when Living Control went down, CSE couldn't survive that. It took too much money out of them. So they went down. I was then halfway through, well, I'd specified a massive job for me with one of my biggest clients at the time. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So funnily enough, I phoned Mike Hanowin at Sevenoaks and Andy Ford going, look, what do you guys do? I've been doing Living Control. They were like, oh, we do URC. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I found out that was AWE. They'd just taken it on, literally just taken it on.
You're going back to, oh blimey, that's sort of about
2010,
around about then, isn't it? Yeah, because I sort of like when I started in 2007. I did a lot of stuff for Sony, and it was probably it's probably about 2011, 2012 that I started to explore more into the custom installation market.
So I was really impressed with what URC Total Control offered even then. They had things like iPod docks that came up to keypads. They had all this kind of stuff, because that's kind of how it then evolved, was iPods. So iPods came in and you were starting to like store music on iPods, and you're docking them, and then that would be available in multi rooms and things like that. So you could listen to your iPod database.
Yeah, because you could dock it in one room, couldn't you?
Yeah, and go to a keypad and browse it from a keypad.
Opus was,
that kind of thing. Yeah. So Opus was like, to me, like the poor man's URC.
I was looking at that.
Yeah.
That was before I knew about URC.
And URC haven't failed to continue to evolve, actually. Like, they do amazing stuff now.
So you still do URC?
Yeah, still do it. Because, again, being brutally honest, I see like C4 as the rot of the industry, because they try to own the customer regardless of the dealer. And they charge kind of like force you into subscriptions. They force you into turnover targets that if you don't make, they pull your account. And if they pull your account, they pull your software, which pulls your support, which basically means that once you've sold one C4 job, you're committed to selling more, because if you don't, you can't support that one that you've sold it to. So I'm not going to be that much of an arsehole to my client and say that they got to buy something new. I made a mistake selling it. I would force myself. It's a catch-22. What do? Do you sell it to more people and put them in that boat? Do you stop selling it and stitch up the ones you sold it to?
I suppose
so I don't like that ethos where I totally agree with controlling the dealer base, because what you need to do is ensure that all your dealers are going to offer that level of support to your client. But I do not believe in like cajoling, or whatever the right word is, your dealers into selling your product regardless of whether it's the best or right solution, because they need to hit a target in order to maintain access to their laptop, in order to maintain their clients. So much as C4 may be a good or a bad product, not arguing that at all, they're just the wrong ethos to match our ethos.
I think the thing is, I've always URC I've always seen of not being derogatory in any way, a smaller company.
It is 100%
where
smaller
I think
company.
that you've only got to look at, you know, the media recently where, you know, a brand like Control 4 has been bought out and then bought out and then bought out, or merged and merged and merged. So with the URC stuff, sort of, then were you using the name of their amps? Because I did URC.
They did DMS amps.
That was it. Because we did
yeah.
quite a few URC projects where we were using the remote controls and some of the early in-wall touchscreens with the app.
Yeah.
And then we were using their DMS multi-channel systems. Then introducing something like something like Den on HEOS.
Absolutely.
As a source, basically.
And these days, it's like Blue Sound's like collared it, because Blue Sound is so two-way with URC.
So you're getting two-way feedback.
So you can browse all your streaming services. You don't need to go outside of the URC app into the HEOS into the Blue Sound app in order to do deep functions. You can do it all from URC. So it's brilliant. It's solved that problem, because Sonos are closed down. Like, this is this is only backing up my argument for why Sonos are a bit evil. They don't let you into their API properly. So if you've got Sonos in any of your systems, you can't properly browse. You can only go to your favorites and playlists and things like that. So whereas Blue Sound, you can browse. It's amazing. So that tied to now what is HDA, not DMS anymore. So they've got the high definition audio streaming amps, and you've got things like the IOs, which give you an input or an output. So you can have a local system like this that has your high end streaming, but like then say your if you want your tap water rather than your Perrier and just want to listen to what's on in the kitchen synchronized, you just put an IO there, tell it as an output from the system, give it the data cable, and you can use your URC centralized sources, your Blue Sound or whatever, and spew it into all your systems perfectly synchronized.
So looking at the video element from it,
I would do Wirestorm, HD over IP.
What do you find like nowadays? Obviously we've discussed a few cinema systems. Would you say that your business is sort of 50-50 between sort of two-channel hi-fi audio and then
we're pretty
cinema
small,
media room?
Because we're pretty small. It's kind of like an all or nothing really with us, because one job you're perfect, as in like busy, the team's all busy, everything's going well. Two jobs you're like, oh, we're busy, and it's all great. Three jobs you're like, you start to panic a bit. It's like, this is great.
You're working at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night.
So sort of reverse it. It doesn't take too much before like it's no jobs, and then it's three jobs again, and then it's two jobs, and it's one job, and then it's no jobs. So what we're doing does sort of blow in the wind a little bit. Like we had a run for years of just cinema room, and we did some. By the end of that role, we just did some unbelievable cinemas.
I can remember. I can remember. I think it was pre-COVID, and I can remember my wife turning around to me, and one morning I got up, and it was almost like same shit, different day type of thing.
Yeah.
And she looked at me. She went, "You're right, honey." And I went, "Yeah, I'm good." I said, "I'm just tired." Yeah. She said, "What are you up to?" I said, "Oh, I'm back at such to build a cinema room, and or painting a cinema room." She said, "So how many cinema rooms have you done this year?" And I went, 5, probably. Yeah. This is the fifth. I'm just finishing the 5th one.
Yeah, that's about as many as you can get in a year.
She said to me, she said to me in a typical loving wife style, she went, "A little while ago, you said to me, if you can get 5 jobs a year, you'll be happy as Larry." Yeah. She said, "You're just finishing your 5th. You don't look very happy to me." I went, "I'm happy, but I'm tired as well."
Yeah. I know. Just at the end of the summer, I was like feeling exactly like that. Now it's been pretty quiet for a while.
I think everybody's pretty quiet at the moment with the world as it is at the beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
So where is sort of Hidden Home
where's it
Tech
going?
now?
Okay,
I mean, you were talking to me. You're talking to a client at the moment.
Things have changed for us in the sense that I feel like I have learned. Honestly, I thank YouTube for this. Really,
Oh yeah.
I have learned so much about some amazing aspects of the industry. I've also opened my eyes to all the things that I've learned by osmosis over the years.
Yeah.
And I've suddenly realised that I'm an interior designer, I'm a lighting designer, I'm an acoustic designer, I'm a network designer, I'm like millions of things I didn't realise.
Well, you go back to those URC days that we were talking about. If you turn around to me then and said, you know, let's for argument's say it was 2015. If you said to me in 2015 that in 2025, in the jobs that we do, even though we're doing majority audio visual, you'll also be putting curtains and blinds in, you'll be doing lighting control. I'll be like, oh, I don't want to do that. But I think you're right. It is, especially if you do a cinema, especially if you do a room like here where we've got a window behind us here, you naturally are in control of that, or you're naturally being asked to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we go down as far as, you know, we're supplying the carpets, the coffee tables, the sideboards, the everything, you know.
So you're full turnkey, basically.
100%, yeah. I mean, you know, I built that single-handedly, that unit at the front there, you know, bit of routing, a bit of, you know, knowing how to finish. I love it. So for us, I'm like a shop fitter. I wouldn't quite class myself as a joiner yet, but I'm close. You know,
do you unnecessarily buy tools just because you don't need them, but you like? I've always wanted a biscuit jointer. I haven't bought myself a biscuit, but then I think it was Tom.
You want a domino, don't you? A Festool domino.
I think it was Tom from Seymour. I bumped into him at a senior event once, and we got chatting about tools, and I said, I've always wanted a domino, and he's like, but I don't need one. He went, yes, you do. You build backing box of speakers. Like, you know, if you're doing an in-ceiling speaker, which you don't want the sound bleed into a bedroom. I went, yeah. He said, how do you do them at the moment? He said, oh, just glue and screw. And maybe a little bit of routering. And he said, no, you need a domino, Festool domino. Luckily, I still haven't, because I'm like, every time I look at it, I'm like, I don't need it.
Again, though, I'm damn close, because there's one or two little finishing details in rooms. You know, I don't know, where you've got the end of like maybe a brought out board where you've hidden the speaker behind some fabric with some acoustic treatment. You've got a light channel or something behind, and you just want to finish that end piece perfectly. And actually what you're doing is sort of nail gunning, gluing. You know, it would be nice if that was dominoed, or, you know, where you're doing like MDF backers for the fabric track systems and things like that. I know you use Cinema Build Systems. We tend to build it ourselves. And
a little
like
bit,
a third-party track. You know, just to make sure they're absolutely millimetre perfect, so when the track runs over it, there's absolutely no fluctuation in, you know, like the fabric paneling and things. Because we take our stuff to another level.
I think from our conversation we've had off camera was like, I think I'm the same. You know, it's almost like you spend so much time sort of like deliberating and cogitating. I've removed fabric from sections before because I've just looked at it and gone, I'm not happy with that. Or there's a tiny mark in the middle and you're like, I can't get that off. Fabric's off. Do a new one.
Oh, for me, the biggest one is like, I can't get over how houses aren't built millimetre perfect. You know, as in like
you build.
Like you put a laser up and you find that there's an inch difference across like a 5 metre room or something between the height that end and the height this end. You're like, I've got to lay a level ceiling on this now. So do I go parallel to the wonky ceiling and have this, and then the window gap is different? Do I square up the windows, but then the depth of the light tray I'm creating on the coffer is going to have to give? What do I do? How do I split these differences?
And the funniest thing is,
it's like cursing the Georgian builders.
Well, the funniest thing is that I can always remember my dad turning around to me and saying, son, don't do your own fencing. When me and my wife bought our first house. Why? He said, because every time you sit in this garden and have a beer, you'll notice all the mess ups you make. And it's almost like, obviously we're all attention to detail, and we'll never do anything and leave a client's project in something how we wouldn't do it. But I think sometimes you fuss over the smallest of details.
You say that, but I am a firm believer, especially with the level of work we've been doing recently, which is like, you know, £250,000 cinema rooms and stuff like that.
You do it how you would want it to be.
How I think people should expect it to be done. Now, there's a difference, isn't there, between the personality that demands it's done. That's not the case. But there should be some pride in the work. And, you know, I do take a very F1 approach.
Have you ever had to rip a room out?
In what sense?
A scenario I had, I always say, and I think a lot of us are the same, is that you put a bit of yourself into every room. And a few years ago, I was on holiday and we had massive floods in the UK. And I come back to a cinema room that I'd built and I had to rip the whole thing out. Now, it wasn't really flooded. It was the room next door that flooded. But I had to take all this room apart because I had to tank it, and it was gutting, just chopping this room into sections. I mean, it's gone back. You would have never have known it, but it was a realization to me that.
Did you have to redo it, or did you manage to like rescue the bits?
No, I know, but because the room wasn't really. There wasn't really anything wrong with the room. The insurance company sort of said, "Oh, there's damp in that corner," so they wanted the whole room included as part of the tanking for the room next door actually flooded. So because it was a room with a room, it's a frame inside the room. We had to chop the CLS into basically chunks of wall section to take them out. Thankfully, my Fez tool, multi-tool, did a lot of the heavy action, but then I literally put it there as a jigsaw. You go in and now, you would have never believed it was ripped out. But there was that small part of me that was like...
It's heartbreaking,
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I had a call.
I got paid to put it back in as well.
We did a lovely job in town. It was amazing. We spent most of the money on this amazing ceiling that was all fabric. You would never have known, because we couldn't acoustically treat the walls, so the only trick we had was the front wall and the ceiling. So I didn't want to build it out of solid materials. I wanted to build it out of fabric. And then the sort of developers, they're like redoing a bit of the extra house, and the client wanted an induction hob, and that needed a really hefty cable from the fuse box, which happened to be in the basement in the next room out from the cinema room, effectively through the cinema ceiling and into the next room. And they were like, "Oh, we don't think it all lines up above, so if we take the floors up, we're not sure we can get access. Can you get the fabric down?" And I'm like, I can get the fabric down. I was thinking of all the knock-on consequences, like the odd bit of fabric where, because it can't have track, you've maybe like staple gunned it somewhere, like upholstered a bit of board or something, and like
that's going to potentially rip the fabric. I always say fabric's a little bit like wallpaper. You want to get it all at the same time.
Yeah. So I was just like you. It's just like I didn't want to leave it in anything but the perfect state. I was like, is the client aware that this may have quite a bit of work involved? Fortunately, I got a phone call. I was due to turn up, I think it was last Monday or something like that. At lunchtime, I had a meeting in the morning. I was like, I'll be there straight after. And before I finished the meeting, I had a missed call, phoned them, and they're like, "We've done it from above." And I was like, yes, thank God for that. Because like I said, I don't leave a job like that without everything being perfect. It's different. Some jobs are very price orientated, and there isn't the money in the job to be fastidious about everything. The client simply wants the stuff. They can't have the.
So tell us about
T's crossed.
Tell us about a current job. I mean, you were speaking to a client earlier when I was setting up.
Yeah.
You were sort of saying about two different.
That's
processes.
an interesting one, because in a dream world we'd have wisdom, but I mean, he could easily afford it, I'm sure, but doesn't want to justify. Doesn't want to dedicate that amount of money to that. So it's then trying to build a system that does what wisdom does, and you never can you? Like build what they want for less when they don't want to spend less.
Do you generally take the client to see, like, you're not a million miles away from where wisdom is? Got showrooms?
No. So I was sort of prepared for this question because I knew it was going to come. So I was like, "Do you have a showroom?" Well, in my dream world, I have this shop that's kind of like maybe like a Macintosh concept store at the front. And it's all like New York, like penthouse thing, red brick, black, that kind of thing. It's a man crash, limited edition vinyls, coffee machine, things like that. People come down, they listen to these like statement.
My wife would say that's a place that I'm building for myself, not
exactly.
necessarily for my clients.
Totally, So, but that would be the shop front. With one or two amazing hi-fis in, again, nice acoustically treated, but in really subtle kind of ways that add to the decor and add to the atmosphere and they don't subtract. Then you go through the back door and you go into hidden home, and that's where you'd have all the cinema rooms and things like that. But I've done the maths. You need like £2 million or something like that to.
I'm a big fan of showrooms. I mean, I haven't got mine at the moment because I moved across the road into a bigger unit fundamentally, and I've not got around to building it. I'm a big fan of showrooms, but
there's a cost.
But there's a cost. Also, the fact of even if you look at a high street shop, so say like one of your big sheds or one of your high street shops, it's the turnover. I mean, a friend of both of ours, Owen, he's upgrading his cinema. And
This
it's
is what I was
only a
gonna
few
come
years
to,
old.
yeah.
So you say about that lovely Macintosh stuff.
Yeah.
What a lot of, especially independents, people don't realise is that the independents quite often have to buy the kit, move on the kit before they can replace the kit.
Yeah, 100%.
But the manufacturer keeps on, projectors.
Changing, yeah.
2-3 years time, Epsom or Sony
That's
or
optimistic,
JVC.
yeah.
Will
2-3 months time with projectors.
Not quite phone
Yeah.
territory yet.
Yeah.
But it is that case of the.
It certainly is with TVs or something like that. By the time you specified it, it's changed.
Even I've just updated my TV at home, and I knew that the LG G9 was coming out, but I still thought actually I just could pick up the G4 because it was a little bit cheaper, even if you're in the trade. But I am sitting there now looking at the G5 going, I want to change
100%.
it.
Yeah. So my feeling on the showrooms is, if I added, what I can say is our showroom, we're based in about 4 or 5 different locations. We've got probably 7 or 8 different cinemas. We've got a total of probably about £5 million worth of stuff on show. We've got rooms from about £40,000, £50,000 fully installed up to about £800,000 fully installed. They just happen to be at my distributors.
And I think
that's the way I see it. They're constantly updated. They're constantly recalibrated.
But you have got this place.
But I do have this place. So this is something different, because this is a unicorn. This doesn't exist on the high street. You go to a hi-fi shop, I guarantee if you come here, you'll have a different experience. One, the coffee's better.
Its coffee is nice.
Yeah. And you had the easy one. I would have done you a better one if you had me. You just don't get a room that's designed like this from the ground up. The acoustics, you don't get a system that's tailored and tweaked. You sort of get box shifting, perhaps is a better way of saying it. I just think what this room sounds like, I was saying, I think I'm being pessimistic. If I was to say I don't reckon there's a retail premises that has a sound like this, probably in a 100-mile radius, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, and I think the thing about this place with you, my old showroom, Owen's showroom, and the other HCA members, I think what the client likes to see is, regardless of whether you're doing a hi-fi system or a cinema system, you bring a client, especially into your own home. There is something nice about that for the client. And I know with us, we take clients quite often to distributors, even when we had the show cinema, because you're not going to have the same speaker brand in every room, and it's very subjective sometimes. I mean, we touched on it earlier, which was like you can spec the ultimate system, which we'll get onto, where you could spec the ultimate system, but actually client might not like the sound of that system. They might want something a little bit different. But I think where our showroom was that, it was that sort of like, it's that final nail, not in the coffin, that final nail of saying, look, this is what I did.
Yes.
So I could do this for you. And
100%. And I think what I actually do use this room for is for local, slightly smaller jobs where lighting design's a thing. And what I show them is how even in a small room like this, you can easily have about 12 or 13 circuits of lighting, curtains and blinds. And if that was dimmers on the wall, how do you achieve this? Whereas I can, without even explaining where the lights are and what the controls are, you can set this for TV, you can set this for music, you can set this for a movie, or you can just have it on, or you can have it off at the touch of a button. I don't yank my curtains. There's virtually no fingerprints, apart from the kids like to climb down the hole. I don't pull on that because it's motorized. I've got a privacy blind that every time you turn the lights on comes down. It's just that, it's that demonstration. I use it to demonstrate lighting design and how you can access the lighting design, because if you've got lots of channels of lighting or lots of independent lights, you can access those presets and the moods and things like that, just touch of a button. You don't need to dial in millions of things, and when you leave you don't need to remember which ones of those millions are on and off, and so I use it for that, and I use it for acoustic design, in the sense that most people who have got a music system have it in a bog standard room. When they come here, they realize there's a sort of fundamental difference in the presentation, like you were talking about the soundstage precision and things like that. You just can't achieve that without acoustics. The linear bass, 2 little small speakers in here.
That was phenomenal, the fact of that when you said to me there's no sub.
No subs, no DSP, no tuning. That is all natural, just coming out of there. So system selection with room treatment. I think that's fundamental, and I think it's way overlooked even now. I know it's sort of becoming like a talked about thing, but I think it's so massively ununderstood by the people selling it and the people, even the manufacturers selling it. You know, it's like when you get like a dodgy salesman car salesman that doesn't know his cars, just selling you the brands they have. They just sort of sell you what it says on paper. Like I won't mention the name, when I was in the training for the acoustic stuff and they're telling me an inch treatment treats 100 hertz. The person telling me that had no idea that it didn't or couldn't.
And most of the people in the room don't realise that.
Technically it does, but it is like by a billionth of a millionth of a decibel.
So where do you see? So was it 25
now,
at the moment? So where do you see sort of 2030, 2035?
Yeah. So to summarise all that, what we've discovered recently is interior design has a bigger impact on how much you enjoy why you're in that room. So whether it's TV, music, film, whatever, the mood, the atmosphere, the design, the lighting, the furniture, the colour schemes, all those things impact everything as much as the technical performance of that room. 100%. It's part of the technical performance of that room, and it is not yet documented properly that that's part of the technical performance. But if your mind and emotions as a human being in that space are not right, then you're not going to watch it. It's like an animal at the zoo, you know, like a caged animal. It's just not right. You need to be comfortable. You need to want to be in that space, regardless of the kit and the technology and the function of the room. So we design from getting the acoustics right, the interior design right, the lighting right, and then the kit right.
So you're similar in respect. You're full turnkey. So if a client said to you, "I've got a 8x5 concrete basement," you know, it's yours to do with what you want.
Yeah, exactly. We can literally hand them back a finished to the last degree room. Then the other element is we've also sort of gone from where we just got to in the conversation about the multi-room thing, where it's like a similar performance envelope in every room. You might have a different function. You might have an AV amp or something in one room, and you might have a cinema room as well that is, you know, perhaps up a notch or two. But the kitchen's the same as the master bedroom, same as the lounge, same as this. It's like, you know, a pair of ceiling speakers or something like it, or a sound bar under the telly with ceiling speakers augmenting it, and maybe a stash sub, but effectively it's the same thing. It's certainly the same source, it's the same this, it's the same that. So what I've realised is if you've got, you know, those jobs are often £200,000-300,000 for the whole London mansion, I'd be inclined to say, well, actually you might want to spend 70 grand on a hi-fi in the living room with 20 grand's worth of acoustic treatment, have some blue sound with a pair of speakers in the kitchen, or perhaps a bit better in the kitchen actually, because that's primarily used an awful lot. But certainly in the guest ensuite, you just want cheap, get you going, has a function, does its job. But even then, maybe even you don't even have it. Maybe even we write that off, controversial as it seems, maybe we don't even put anything but the cables into the ensuites. And we take all that budget and we focus it, because I don't believe that a hi-fi stops getting better until you're into the millions. I mean that genuinely. The Macintosh Sonos Fabris Suprema system I had at Munich Hi-Fi is about £1 million. It was by far and away the best system, and it felt like a ballroom. It was unreal. Yeah, I was immediately.
It's one of the ones I've not been to. Yeah, there's a few that I've not been to like that, which I really, really want to go to.
It was just unbelievable. Now, again, until you can afford to do that in every room, I believe in compromising the lesser required rooms in order to get somewhere closer to that in the areas you're actually going to use. Now, I'm starting to notice it in clients' houses that I've made that mistake over the years. They're sat in their living rooms all the time, not even using the cinema room that's down in the basement, because actually the living room is a comfortable, more ergonomic environment because it's close to the rest of the house. It's easy to communicate to that room and stuff like that, and they're sat in there using like a total control DMS AV amp. I'm like, hang on a minute, they've got Datasat and whatever else down in the basement, like some mega cinema, and they're not using it because up there's that. So what I should have done is put like a Griffin, a Mac, and a pair of Sonos Fabris or something up there. So it's this hybrid system of TV augmentation but amazing music.
Yeah, sorry, we had a couple of technical difficulties then, so sorry about the potentially crude splice. So as I was mentioning, I've made these mistakes where, perhaps I should have introduced the high-end hi-fi into the living environment so that they had something to augment the TV, but they also had this other choice and function that would get used all the time. When there's nothing on the telly, stick some music on, and they get this amazing experience all the time. And again, maybe a bit more attention on the acoustics because I can
do it where you don't notice. You know, had I not told you about this front wall, yes, you might think it's a bit unusual, but effectively we've got ways these days of hiding it in a way that actually only looks better than it does when you don't do it. Fabric finishes are incredible.
So if we touch on the Munich high end bit, you went on this a minute ago.
Yeah.
So let's say stay single roomed.
Yeah.
If size was no object, money was no object, and don't worry, it's a safe zone.
Yeah.
Any manufacturer and distributor was not harmed in this comment and won't come at you. If money was no object, size was no object, and what would you
What would I
opt
do?
for?
What would I do? I would find a way to have something like that Sonus Faber Suprema system, which is these huge towers with like separate, they're integral to the speaker, but they're totally separate boxes, subwoofers that look like speakers. So you can place the mid and highs where they sound best, you know, away from the back wall in the room, and you can put the subs where they sound best, and then they've got passive crossovers and stuff like that. Oh, sorry, active crossovers, I guess, in a passive subwoofer system, to time compensate and things like that for where they are. So you have these mega speakers, huge stack of Macintosh, although I'd love to find a way to get the Griffin power amps in there.
Source.
And yeah, well, I'll put that around. Well, it's got to be K-scape or something for movies, hasn't it? There's no other real way of doing it. Then for sound, I think, I'd be at the top end of the Inuus tree, Grim Audio, something like that.
And then what?
So that'd be Rune
and
for
then
music,
Tidal.
with Tidal and Cobuzz and all my stored catalogue that I built up over my years that sort of directs the Rune algorithm to finding more and more stuff that's right up my street.
But I can also see in the corner we have a very small stack of
vinyl. Yeah, I enjoy the.
And you got a Macintosh.
Macintosh MT2. Some people obviously I need to be able to demonstrate it to some degree, but also I like to buy one or two albums that are meaningful to me, because my CD collection is now in boxes up in there, because I can listen to my CDs in CD format through the through the server. It's perhaps the
there's something a little bit. There's still
but
something nice.
Just having like the ownership and seeing it there and stuff, that reminds you, triggers you to listen to it.
I think it's a bit like if you look at video. A few people often say to me about how projection is going to die because of micro LED screens. We got involved in a project last year, I think it was, that had a micro LED screen because it was for an ex-footballer or his old house, and everybody I said it's so impressive to look at. But it's just too bright. And I know that's changed. And I think for me personally, there's something nice about a projector and a projector screen. And I think with vinyl, I'm certainly seeing, even me, people asking for vinyl in projects.
I about the physical process, yes. And I think you put it on and you listen through the album way more like easily without that twitchy, I should skip to the next track thing. So I think there's that. But in terms of actual quality now, I think that streaming, even streaming, and I know I'm going to get shot down for this, but it's true, and I challenge someone to come here and do a blind test on it. Streaming is so good now that it has all the qualities of the vinyl, and this isn't just streaming, actually, I should say, like digital to analog conversion, and the whole chain of handling digital signals is so good. There's everything digital has with none of the downsides. None of the keeping it clean, because if you don't keep your vinyl clean, it does sound awful. If
and
you
the
don't
exploratory, the fact of that you can. I mean, you played that single to me. I will go home and put that on my system. So to wrap things up, how's it best for people to get in contact with you?
Phone me. I love talking to people. I love giving out free advice. I love
You're
trying
to
to
regret
communicate.
that when this goes up on YouTube.
No, I'm not. I really do love giving out the free advice because I think that's the fundamental starting point for how I run my business. My dad said to me that, if you want to make a quick buck, have people over. If you want to be in business in 20 years, be honest. I'm honest to a fault. That really does negatively affect my financial situation. Can't help it. I just want everyone to be happy and to get along.
You just want to be happy. I think the same as I get when a client comes back to you and says how much they've enjoyed that space. It's really nice from a non-monetary point of view, from just the fact that it puts a spring in your step.
And I think I've come to realize, I know and always have known, but I've really come to solidify it recently. Music and hi-fi is a massive passion for me, but I've also realized that so is lighting design, so is interior design, so is cinema, and so is how you achieve that, so through the acoustics and things like that. it is a genuine passion of mine now, and I'm coming to terms with that and accepting that, and now I realise that I can just pass that on.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to do, like get in touch with me and just chat.
Web address is?
Web address is hiddenhome.tech, TECH.
Don't worry about giving your mobile number out because they can find that on your website.
Yeah, they can find that.
You've also got a podcast. You've done a couple of episodes
we do.
yourself.
Yeah, so we're Hidden Home Technology on YouTube.
Yeah. Link in the description and all that lot.
Yeah, so you'll see like a handful of project videos. You'll see a handful of product reviews. Yeah. And I'm starting to do some slightly more blog-based stuff where I chat about little jobs I'm on, but I always forget when I'm on site, or the client's there, or there's somebody in the room. It's awkward. But I'm starting to try and do that because I want people to get to know me and realise that actually they shouldn't be at all worried about phoning me and asking and talking, because I'm that person that they now, through proxy of watching me, know me.
I think I think that, coming here, getting to know you myself a bit better. I think that when you look at a lot of people in our industry, the HCA members, that I know, and people that I know just from going for events, I think a lot of people are the same. It's just like, it's that personal touch. It's a lot of heart on the sleeve.
Yes,
so,
it is,
yeah.
And again, it's sort of why you were going to ask the question, or maybe you did, and maybe I just missed the answer, but why am I still in the industry? It's because, yes, there's a few oddbods, especially in the dealer game. There's some strange dealers out there who are not great, but in terms of the actual manufacturers, distribution network and support going upwards from the dealers,
it's a family.
It's a family.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
We've got an event tomorrow, one of the CDO road shows, which is why I'm up in Bristol, Bath. And the majority of people we see there tomorrow will be friends. Yeah. You would happily go out for a beer with them. Yeah. And they're in the same industry. I mean, I've got some people around me where I am in East Sussex. Technically they're competitors, but we happily work together.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the trust levels are just unbelievable, going upwards. Again, Tuesday night I'm out with Mal from AWE, technical support for URC, because he's a friend. The amount he's helped me and helped clients through helping me, it's just ridiculous. So every time he's about, I'm desperate to go meet him. It's the same with everyone. Owen, Cinema Works, he's a really old friend now. He was a rep in the hi-fi industry when I was starting. Just know all these people forever, and that if I don't have that, then I don't deal with them really. And I'm not saying it's like boys club. I'm talking about if I don't have a relationship with somebody where they won't tell me the crap products in their catalogue as a distributor or as a manufacturer, I don't trust them and I won't deal with them. I need to be on that level where people say you have this model or this model and don't bother with that one, because that's how it's impossible otherwise to know what to recommend to clients.
And I think a lot of brands like that, they will get you through to those. I mean, I'm off to one brand out in Amsterdam in a month or so, where they've got like a few dealers out there to get feedback on their new products. So, but awesome. Right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for coming. I'm glad to have.
And thank you for being a guinea pig on what actually is the first of these sessions now. And we'll hopefully do another one in a year or so.
I'd love to be part of any of them. I actually realised I can talk constantly forever.
Again, for something that was going to be 20 minutes long, I don't know how long this has gone on for.
Watch my ones on YouTube. They're exactly the same.
Awesome, mate. Thanks, Dan.
Brilliant.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you.
Catch you later. Cheers, mate.